Hello there, this is L24 Midnight News and these are the headlines. As a representative of the President of the Republic in the Arab-China Summit, Algerian Prime Minister Mr. Ayman bin Abdulrahman stated that China has always been and will continue to be an important trade partner. China Gulf Summit underscores the importance of reinforcing bilateral partnership as leaders directed continuation of strategic dialogue between the two sides. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday attended a meeting of Supreme Euro-Asian Economic Council in Bishkek, where he was joined by leaders of Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Armenia. And in FIFA World Cup, as surprises continue in Qatar's FIFA World Cup, Brazil is out on penalties and Argentina booked a ticket to the semi-finals. Hello again. On Thursday, the 9th high-level African Peace and Security meeting concluded in Iran. Algeria under the title of support of new African members of United Nations Security Council in preparing to address issues of peace and security of African continent. Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ramtana expressed his gratitude for active participation and positive commitment of ministers and senior officials during important discussions. He also affirmed Algeria's keenness to work to strengthen the fight against terrorism and extremism in the country and in the whole continent.
This session is distinguished by all standards and successful. First, in terms of participation, all members of the Security Council are present at different levels, including the ministerial level, and a number of countries from the African continent outside the Security Council, then a number of European partners, such as Switzerland and Norway. All these elements in terms of participation have been strengthened of the quality of the deliberations and gave the participants the opportunity to deepen a lot and reach an advanced and in-depth conclusion on all points of the agenda. And on mentioning the issue of terrorism mentioned by my colleague, you know that President Abdelmajid Tebboune was appointed by the Africans as the coordinator of African action to strengthen the fight against terrorism, as well as criminalization of violent extremism on the African continent. Algeria will take additional initiatives in order to strengthen cooperation on this level between countries, knowing that Algeria hosts African commissions charged with promoting these claims from African countries with regard to combating terrorism.
In the same line of thought, the Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ramtana held talks today in Iran with the Commissioner of Peace and Security for the African Union, Bankul Adiwi. In a statement to press following this meeting, Mr. Bankul stated that these sessions they discussed how to reach concrete efforts to achieve sustainable peace in the Sahel region. On the sidelines of this event, Amamra also held talks with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Kenya, Alfred Motoa, who emphasized that relations between Kenya and Algeria were one of the best relations, noting that Kenya wishes to import petroleum and gas materials from Algeria.
A very good engagement with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Minister Lamamra, on areas of common interest to the African Union and the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria. Most importantly, we discussed how we must scale up our joint efforts to bring peace to the Sahel. Issues of collaboration, working together with partners, working together with the United Nations, of course, working together with the member states.
Privileged to be here with my counterpart. His Excellency has welcomed us very well here in Algeria. We are here for the peace meeting, and we discussed peace and prosperity in Africa. We discussed the challenges that are facing us currently in the continent of Africa and what to do about it. we had several issues that we discussed. First of all is about regional peace and the role that the African Union can bring to get regional peace. We discussed issues of sanctions, where we said we cannot stand for unilateral sanctions. We want collective, organized sanctions that have an end, that are not perpetual and continuing. And so we had a very, very good session here for several days, and I'm very happy. Myself and my delegation are pleased to be here, among many things.
The Algerian Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman said in a speech during his participation in the works of the Arab-Chinese Summit held in the Saudi capital, Riyadh, that the Sino-Arab relation in recent years has witnessed significant jump with which intra-trade exchanges reached record levels that made China an important trade partner. During his participation in the Arab-China Summit, as a representative of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, that the Sino-Algerian relations are rooted in history, calling them strategic relations.
يستوجب تكثيف جهود ترتبط الجزائر والصين بعلاقات تاريخية واستراتيجية.
Algeria and China are linked through historical and strategic relations extending to the Algerian Liberation Revolution. China was the first non-Arab country to recognize the provisional government in 1958. Both countries also share the same visions towards issues of common interests. Algeria and China share a firm support concerning the fundamental interests of both countries.
The Arab-China Summit and the China Gulf Cooperation Council Summit, two first of its kind events in Chinese Arab history, were held successfully on Friday in the Saudi capital, Riyadh. This event was an opportunity to bring China-Arab relations to a new height. Nabil Khazini.
Despite being physically distanced in this very large hall, Arab states and China pledged deeper ties at a summit with the Chinese president. The summit was important as it aimed at strengthening the strategic partnership between Arab countries and China based on comprehensive cooperation and common development. Xi Jinping called on China and Arab states to carry forward the spirit of China-Arab friendship and foster a closer community between the two sides.
We must continue to consolidate political mutual trust, firmly support each other's core interests, jointly uphold the principle of non-interference in each other's internal affairs, join hands in practicing multilateralism, safeguard the common interest of developing countries, and be partners in seeking common development.
The world currently knows shifting winds and growing great power competition. The Algerian Prime Minister said that during such circumstances, boosting ties with China would help a world far from unilateral policies to emerge.
In light of the polarization that the international order knows, strengthening strategic relations between the Arab world and China would contribute to the emergence of a multipolar world, away from unilateral policies and hegemonic endeavors.
The increase in Chinese influence in the region is worrying the United States. However, the Saudi foreign minister said that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia wants to cooperate with both Washington and Beijing, and that while competition was good, polarization was not.
To a different matter now, Thursday marked the 35th anniversary of the first Palestinian Intifada, which broke out on December 8, 1987, and was called the Stones Intifada, which contributed to placing the Palestinian cause on the international political agenda. The first Palestinian Intifada is considered one of the most important stations of the Palestinian popular struggle since the start of the Zionist occupation on Gaza Strip and the West Bank, including the city of Al-Quds in 1967. The anniversary comes while the Zionist occupation is escalating violence against Palestinian people. The Moroccan Association for Human Rights recorded a continued infringement of rights and freedom in Morocco by the Mahzen regime and the continuation of the wave of high prices in light of what it called the complicit silence of the state, which did not take any preventive measures to limit the violation against Moroccan families. The most egregious practices raised by the association in its statement is manipulation of the death case of the young Yassine Ashibli, who died as a result of the violence and torture he was subjected to in a police station. Still in Africa, the Libyan political scene is witnessing an international and local political movement that pushes efforts for political settlement toward a solution, especially in light of the agreement of the actors in the political scene to go to elections that end the transitional stages by launching a political dialogue on constitutional basis, a movement whose first indications were evident in the choice that the UN envoy Abdullah Batili made with the active institutions in political and even security scene since he assumed his duties. In the Middle East, Iran stipulated the lifting of sanctions imposed on it in return for returning to the nuclear agreement at a time when the European Union intends to impose more and more of them on the Iranian officials during the meeting of foreign ministers in Brussels next Monday. In this regard, Saudi Arabia stressed the need for Tehran to adhere to nuclear agreements as well as the principles of good neighborliness at the GCC summit that held in Saudi's capital, Riyadh.
The Kingdom affirms the need for Iran to adhere to international principles and conventions, to fulfill its nuclear obligations, to cooperate with the International Atomic Energy Agency, and to preserve the principle of good neighborliness.
President Vladimir Putin says Russia will not sell oil to any country that imposes a price cap on its oil exports and is considering reducing its oil production. Hussein Burkan on what's follow.
President Vladimir Putin warned that Russia, the world's biggest exporter of energy, may cut oil production and will refuse to sell oil to any country which imposes the West's price cap on Russian oil. The Group of Seven in Australia last week agreed a $60 per barrel price cap on Russian seaborne crude oil after European Union members overcame resistance from Poland.
As for our creation, I have already said that we simply will not sell to those countries that make such decisions. We will think, maybe even, I'm not saying that this is a made decision, but we will think, if necessary, about a possible reduction in production.
Putin affirmed that Moscow would not lose out from the West price cap and that the government finances would hold up fine.
The proposed Western price cap corresponds to the prices at which we sell the oil today. In this sense, this decision does not affect us in any way.
Putin described the West's move as stupid and that energy prices would skyrocket for those who impose the caps, and that Moscow was preparing a response which would be announced in the upcoming few days.
Following some non-market harmful decision would be foolish for everyone. Prices will go down, investments will be reduced to zero, ultimately prices will skyrocket and hit them, those who offer such solutions.
The EU and G7 countries expect Russia will still have an incentive to continue selling oil at that price, while accepting smaller profits. The level of cap is to be reviewed by the EU and G7 every 2 months, with the first such review in mid-January. The cap on crude will be followed by a similar measure affecting Russian petroleum products that will come into force on February 5th.
Still with the Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday attended a meeting on the Supreme Eurasian Economic Council in Bishkek. He was joined by the leaders of Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Armenia, who are also members of the Council. The Council aims to promote free trade, coordinate member states' financial systems and regulate their industrial and agricultural policies. Armenian Prime Minister reported rising tension in Nagorno-Karabakh to Russian President Vladimir Putin that negotiations were held in Bishkek during a meeting of the Supreme Eurasian Economic Council, and it was the only bilateral meeting that was scheduled. Recently, leaders of Armenia and Russia have been meeting quite often, but there is no information about what the discussions were about.
We are seeing rising tensions in Nagorno-Karabakh, in the area where Russian peacekeeping forces operate. The Lashin corridor has recently been blocked, causing serious concerns in Nagorno-Karabakh.
Up to 125,000 residents of French capital Paris plunged into darkness on the evening of Thursday due to a technical incident on transformer, causing a power outage lasting several minutes. Footage posted on social media shows trees with lampposts, red lights and buildings completely turned off, with car headlights sometimes the only source of light. To the UK now, where Royal Mail workers held a rally near the Houses of Parliament in central London on Friday as members strike over pay and conditions. Britain is in the midst of a wave of industrial action in both the public sector and privately operated rail sector, which relies heavily on government subsidies as well as other industries, including postal and telecoms workers. At least 131 civilians, including 17 women and 12 children, were arbitrarily executed by shooting or stabbing in late November in two villages in Eastern Republic of Congo, according to a primarily UN investigation released Thursday, which accuses the M23 rebellion. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk said he was truly horrified by massacre of civilians in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where he planned to visit next year.
On the Democratic Republic of Congo, I mean, it's obviously very, very concerning, and I am deeply concerned about the situation, especially when it comes to the exercise of democratic freedoms in the country, but also really appalled by the mass killings of more than 130 civilians by the M23 in Kisheshe and Bondo in the North Kivu province. We also for 23, it is on my list of countries to visit, and it's clear that we must make sure that DRC remains on the agenda, especially from a human rights perspective. It's very important for us, and also really an urge to ending this fighting that happens in different parts of the country, in particular North Kivu, and we know it's always the civilians that suffer as a result of that.
Human Rights Day is observed every year on the 10th of December, the day that the United Nations General Assembly adopted in 1948. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In the decades since the adoption of this declaration, human rights have become more recognized and more guaranteed across the globe. However, promises of this declaration of dignity and equality and rights has been under a sustained assault in recent years as the world faces challenges, new and ongoing pandemics, conflicts, exploding inequalities, bankruptcy, global financial system, racism, and climate change.
The world is facing unprecedented and interlocking challenges to human rights. Hunger and poverty are increasing and affront the economic and social rights of hundreds of millions of people. Civic space is shrinking, media freedom and the safety of journalists are in dangerous decline in almost every region of the world. Trust in institutions is evaporating, especially among young people. The COVID-19 pandemic has led to increased levels of violence against women and girls. Racism, intolerance and discrimination are running rampant. Human rights are the foundation for human dignity and the cornerstone of peaceful, inclusive, fair, equal and prosperous societies.
Coming back to Algeria, the 11th International Cinema Festival of Algiers drew to close audiences. Algerian as well as foreign movie makers seems very pleased with the event because this edition provided an opportunity for them to present their work. Marableo.
The 9th day of the Algerian International Cinema Festival was the last day of broadcast before the closure, a program with a very nice selection, in which 4 outstanding Algerian figures in the world of cinema were present at the Palace of Culture Mufti Zakaria in Algiers. Lina Koudri, Reda Kateb and Samir Gasmi, along with movies director Rachid Bouchareb, conducted different debates, much to the delight of film enthusiasts as well as movie makers. The debates most notably revolved around the correlation of cinema and theater.
Le métier de comédien est tellement différent.
The job of an actor is so different. That is to say, I have the impression that there are no 2 actors which are similar, and at the same time there are bases we can talk about. The theater is one, the cinema is much more random, and really spending time on the set there often brings a time when you already have to have well-built bases.
One basic principle discussed during today's masterclass was about the making of actors who were mainly linked to theater, in which they shed a light on how the invention of cinema completely changed these criteria.
I believe that it is a superficial thing, the question of this problem, because the theater is a different form. But for me, work is not how you carry your voice. That is like exercises. It's technical and it's physical. But I place the work elsewhere in what you live, how you build, the invisible part which will be the construction of your character.
C'est la première fois que j'assiste à un festival de cinéma vu que je suis.
It is the first time that I have attended the film festival since I am much more into the theater. This experience taught me a lot of things. I met a lot of people from the cinema. I have an open eye on this field now. I met moviegoers, so it is a plus in my career, and I find that this initiative is very good for young people like us. They gave us a chance to share our passions.
This session intended primarily for young current or future actors and actresses. These 3 actors starring in major films such as their last movie, Nofranja, a movie from an event that marked the Algerian history and traumatized a whole generation, have already received numerous awards for their performance, making them the world-class actors. Lina Koudri, Reda Kateb and Samir Gasmi, outstanding Algerian cinema stars, were present here today in the 9th day of Algerian International Cinema Festival, along with the movie's director Rachid Bouchareb, for their movie Nofranja, a movie that marked history and traumatized a whole generation. This was Marwa Belaiwer, reporting for Al24 News from the Palace of Culture, Algiers.
This 11th International Cinema Festival of Algiers will come to an end tomorrow. Talking to Al24 News channel, foreign movie makers expressed their satisfaction with this event because this edition provided an opportunity for them to present their work and open their eye on the Algerian cinema and Algerian history.
So it's the first time I'm coming here in Algeria, in Alger. I'm so happy that they make us come here to present our film and meet all the Algerian filmmakers, cinephiles, and to present our film here. For myself, my film has not resonated in in Africa as it resonates here. I think it's the best public I ever met. So I'm really happy to be here and to see Algeria from my own perspective and not from the media that I used to, yes.
J'ai été très contente d'être là parce que ça m'a permis de rencontrer.
I was very happy to be here because I had the chance to meet festival directors and other professionals to exchange with them. This festival can bring other collaborations to West Africa. It was very profitable for me.
Ending up our news bulletin with sport, Brazil, the favorite to win this year's World Cup, is out of Qatar 2022 after losing to Croatia on penalties 4-2 in Friday's dramatic quarterfinals. It has looked as tough. Neymar had won it Brazil after he scored a stunning solo goal in extra time, but Bruno Bilkovic broke out Brazilian heart with a last-gasp equalizer to send the game to penalties. It was Croatia goalkeeper Dominik Levakovic who was the hero yet again in the shootout, saving Rodrigo's first 2-1. And on the other game, Argentina have beaten Netherlands in a stunning penalty shootout to reach the World Cup semi-final. The Dutch fought out back to level 2-2, or rather a sensational fashion, with Walcott scoring his first second-time match in the 100th minutes before extra time took place. Argentina now will face Croatia in Tuesday's semi-final after they shocked Brazil on penalties. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our social media. As for now, good night.